Welcome, everybody, to the Live Ultralight podcast powered by Outdoor Vitals. I am Joe, and I have with me on the podcast today Jeremiah. Now, Jeremiah is a backpacker whose backpacking YouTube channel, Jeremiah Stringer Hikes, has over 27,000 subscribers and also hosts the Backpacking Podcast, along with John Kelly, who we had on just a few weeks ago. Welcome to the podcast, Jeremiah.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on here. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for me. I get to, through this podcast, I'm getting to meet all these cool like backpackers and creators, and you're now my third guest I've ever had on this show. So I'm kind of nervous. I'll be honest. I've been listening to and watching a lot of your videos, mostly as I've been working, because that's what that's part of my job, is to watch YouTube videos, and then Tayson will pay me for it. So
I'm so envious, man.
No, I'm usually doing other stuff at the same time, but no, yeah. So I've gotten to know you in that kind of way, in that kind of weird way where you know someone who's, I guess, maybe has a YouTube channel, has a podcast or something like that, and then now you're familiar with them, and then you finally meet them, and it's kind of like, oh, I actually know quite a bit. Yeah, I know how this guy kind of works. So
isn't that wild, dude?
It is wild.
The internet just opened up this whole new realm of, I guess, interpersonal skills. I don't know.
Skills, I'm not sure, but it is definitely like a new, it's like a new celebrity almost, but it's like, more contained, more confined, smaller, like niche groups, and I don't know. It's kind of cool. I've been doing podcasts for years and years. Have nothing to do with backpacking, and what I found was like, I don't know. You get like you have like your little, just your community, and almost no one knows about it except for like those couple thousand people that listen to you, or a couple hundred people, however many, and but yet for them, like, you are like a major part of their life, because they're checking in every time you upload a video or do a podcast or whatever. And so it's interesting when you meet listeners of that, and also vice versa.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I was thinking about something along the same lines as what you're describing. So whenever I had COVID, of course, you're binge watching stuff on Netflix, right? Mm-hmm. You're literally locked in your house. And I saw this documentary on Netflix, and it's like, oh, the last day to watch this is like this coming Saturday. And then you're like, oh, okay, I have to watch it because it's going to be gone, right? Poof, it's gone off of Netflix, and then you're never going to get the chance to see it. So I watched it, and it was about flat Earth. It's like flat Earth people. And they had this whole community, and it was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, over 3 or 4 years, it just kind of blown up. And then they were having like conferences and get-togethers, and they had this whole community that people kind of know about it because the flat Earth has been popularized over the last little while. But I was like, backpacking, nothing to do with conspiracy, but it's kind of similar in like this little niche of a community that we have where we all, I don't know, we're just gathering resources from each other. We're going on trips. We're meeting each other. People are listening, consuming content. It's wild.
I'm just surprised when I started working for Outdoor Vitals, and I'm doing helping with Tayson and Derek with content creation. Thing was, like, whenever we would do like research on YouTube or look at other channels like yours or Dan Becker, and what I would find out is like Tayson would go, we've done something with him. Oh yeah, I know him. Like, just knows everybody in the community basically, or at least is very familiar with their content, kind of like has a good hold on it. So it's very interesting. This kind of like small niche community of backpackers, especially like the YouTube backpacking space is very interesting. A lot of gear reviews, which includes your channel.
Yeah, I like to do the gear reviews. It's been an interesting journey so far for me with the whole YouTube and stuff, but I got to tell you, I met some of my best friends in college, lifelong friends. And then since I've started doing YouTube, the same thing, like some of my favorite people you still go hang out. I went on vacation to Savannah, Georgia with somebody that I met on YouTube. We done a couples trip. His fiance and him and myself and my wife, and we literally spent like a week there, went to the beach and everything. Never would have met him if he didn't comment on the video and be like, hey, is that a J&H landmark sticker on your water bottle? He's like, that is here in Lexington, Kentucky. I go to that store all the time. You from around Kentucky? Like, yeah. And then before you know it, a couple months later, you're on a trip together, and then voila, you're like brothers.
Yeah, that's bizarre. I got a podcast listener, one of my podcasts, which I won't plug on this show. They're actually coming to like stay at my place. Like, I've met him in New Jersey and in New York, and then bringing it now. He wants to come. He's never been to the western part of the United States, and he's going on a trip. But he's going to stay here for a couple weeks and just like be here because I live near Zion and all that. So I'll be at base camp. It's so bizarre. Such a bizarre, cool world. It's a really positive part of all these kind of technological changes and all that. Sorry to get a sidetrack. We're definitely going to talk about backpacking. So you said, did you just say you were in Kentucky?
I'm in, South Central Kentucky is where I was born and raised.
Okay. So born and raised. Have you ever left the state?
I don't sound like it, but yeah, I have, I grew up pretty poor. And then whenever I made it to college, I worked full time and stuff and went to school. And that gave me a chance to really get outside of this state. And I got to travel a little bit before I discovered backpacking, travel a little bit and lived in Ecuador for a month. That was interesting. That elevation was insane. That was like 10,000 feet. Oh, so wow. Like I play pickup basketball. I love doing that. And I tried playing there, and it was like, I sprinted up the court one time. It was like breathing through a straw. I was like, but when I got back, I mean, I guarantee I could run up 5 flights of stairs. But backpacking wise, man, we went out west to Colorado. I've done the Vermont Long Trail, done like a 75-ish mile trail north in South Carolina. And that was a foothills trail. So try to get around a little bit, but Kentucky's the best state. No offense.
All right. I've driven through it, and unfortunately, that's about all I could say about it. It's always beautiful over in the East Coast for a Westerner, I guess, like all the greenery and all that. It is beautiful out there. You were playing pickup basketball? Was the outdoors a part of your life, or just sports, or what?
Both. As I was growing up, I really did a lot of camping and that kind of stuff. So, you drive up in the car, and I grew up on Lake Cumberland, and it's one of the biggest lakes in Kentucky. We get a lot of tourism and stuff. So as a local, you maybe go camp around the lake and swim and all that kind of stuff. And then whenever the season arrives, maybe do a little ginseng hunting. So you just take off through the woods, and you're looking for these plants with certain type of leaves and certain type of berries, depending on the time of year, and you dig up the roots and sell those things. And you kind of just learn to navigate, I guess, the mountains around here. And of course, you travel to surrounding states, maybe the Smokies. That's like a rainforest. So a little exposure to the great outdoors. But then in 2018, my wife's dad asked me if I wanted to go backpacking on like a 4 or 5 day trip through the Smokies. And I was like, well, what does that even mean? He's like, well, you've been hiking before, right? And I was like, yeah, I love hiking, go check out waterfalls and all that good stuff. And he's like, well, we do that, but you had to take everything with you for several days, and you just sleep out there. And I was like, what are you talking about, bro? And he's like, yeah, you want to give it a try? I was like, sure. So I borrowed some people's gear and headed out on that trip with him. And I met these people that were through hiking the Appalachian Trail. We were doing a section hike from Fontana Dam to the Clingman Dome area, Clingman's Dome. And I was like, man, this is crazy. Who are these people? And they told me, and they tell me stories about the bear encounters that they had and going into town. They're like, we're about to head into Gatlinburg. And I was like, Gatlinburg? I mean, I was born and raised around here, man. That was only a few hours away. So that was a weekend trip. And they're like, what? Well, we've never been there. We're going to go check it out. We're 400, 500, 600 miles into the Appalachian Trail, and we think it'd be cool. And I was like, well, let me show you around. So this is bad of me to say. I kind of ditched my in-laws family down there and spent the night with the thru hikers for a couple nights and hiked with them on the trail. And then we couldn't get a ride. You get to Newfound Gap and you're just in the middle of nowhere, and Gatlinburg is still like a 45-minute drive away. So there's no way you're going to walk there. You're trying to hitchhike, and then you got all these tourists down there, and nobody wants to pick up a bunch of stinky hikers. So I was like, well, let me give it a try. Because the guy that I was with, he was from like around the Boston area. And I was like, I don't know. Like, he was literally walking over people and they'd roll up their windows, trying to hitchhike. And I was like, let me give it a try. And then I met this guy and started talking to him about fishing. He was from Orlando area, and they were pulled their camper up. And I was like, man, well, where are you headed? I love fishing too. I've been fishing my whole life. And he was like, well, we're actually headed back into town. I got to get some gas. And I was like, you don't think we could bum a ride with you, do you? And he was like, well, how many is there? And I was like, well, we can fit in there. There's 4 or 5 of us. He had a big truck. And he gave us a ride. And on the way, I started talking to him about Dave Ramsey, which is this finance.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, yeah, my wife and I have been doing this stuff. And he's like, no way. I've been preaching this to my son. God has put you into our life. And he was like, you talking about this. And his son was sitting right next to him. He's like, this is supposed to happen. He's like, of course we'll take you into town. So, I bummed us a ride there. I'm like 10 for 10 on the hitchhiking. I think once the accent kicks in and they hear the hospitality and the enduring, it kind of lulls you in.
Do you work on that, or is that your natural voice?
I think that's God-given talent right there.
Right. Okay, so that story underlines a few things, like your willingness to just go into the Smokies with your father-in-law, and also your willingness to just chat up a guy and try to hitchhike out of there. You were talking about going to Ecuador before. I think you have the heart of an adventurer. That's what that sounds like. Where does that come from?
I don't know. I think it maybe was, as I grew up in a really small town, and, there's only like, I don't know, the city population is like 4,000 or 5,000 people probably. Where I live now is only 15,000 people in the city. And whenever you grow up like that, you really have no choice but to live like a semi-sheltered life. There's just not a lot of exposure out there, And if you don't have enough money to travel, then you just kind of live there. So once I got to college and I figured out that not everybody's like me, I went to a public school, went to Western Kentucky University, and I don't know. It's just like, it's so exciting because there's so much adventure to be taken. And, you make friends with people who are from completely different backgrounds. And then, you start getting introduced to new things, and you just start to grow as a person. You start to grow up, your brain's finally fully developing, and you can make your own big boy decisions. And so I think that played a role, just discovering in college, there's so much opportunity. And then, moving back, kind of around my hometown, I'm like, well, there's a lot of people around me that are just like me here. I got to get out and find the new cultures. So that trip for the Vermont Long Trail, I actually, the guy's name was Hatchet Man that I had met on the Appalachian Trail. And
all right.
He probably thought I was crazy whenever I was out there. And then out of the blue, I hadn't talked to him in months. He texted me and he's like, hey man, you got anything going on here in like 2 or 3 weeks? And I was like, well, I was thinking about hiking the Sheltowee Trace, which is like a 300 or 400 mile trail that runs through Kentucky and part of Tennessee. He's like, why don't you come do the Vermont Long Trail with me? He's like, I'm trying to get away from the Boston area. You know, it's so jam packed. I need some outdoors time. And I was like, well, what's that look like? And he's like, well, we'll be out there for a month. I was like, well, that's about how long the other trail was going to take. He's like, just fly up here, man. And I was like, let me think about it. And so that weekend I went to Trail Days. That's over in Damascus, Virginia. And I got back on Monday, I believe. And then that next Thursday or Friday, I flew out to meet him up in Boston. And we drove up, did the Vermont Long Trail. You got to have a little adventure in your life, man. It's so short. Just say yes.
I want to bring it back to the story where you were with it was meant to be. You were with the guy, the Dave Ramsey fan, in the car. Were you like bitten by the backpacking bug at that point, or what?
I mean, I don't know if I was bitten just yet. I was definitely falling in love with it. And at that point, I'd spent 4 days in the woods, and 3 of them was with these thru hikers. And then you have no choice but to kind of be enveloped in that culture if you're just surrounded by it. And so once I got to there, and then I had success on the hitchhiking, I was like, there's a win. And I was like, what else? What else does this thru hiking style of life have for you? And once we got to Gatlinburg, I mean, there's like moonshine distilleries down there. And so I took them out for like taste testings, and, you know, went to a couple different bars and went out to eat, and we got this hotel. And I mean, it was like, I was like, this is crazy awesome. At that point, like, I had to call my in-laws and be like, hey, can y'all pick me up? They were in Pigeon Forge, which is pretty close to Gatlinburg. I was like, I need y'all to pick me up in the morning because we're going to head home. Right. My trip is over. And they're like, yeah, we'll meet you. And I was like, at that point, yep, count me in. I'm definitely game for this. I can't keep borrowing gear. I have to, I don't know. I got to get my own gear. Plus my pack was probably like 65, 70 pounds and super uncomfortable. And they kept helping me repack, and they're just so nice. And I was like, yep, count me in.
Oh, that's awesome. So from, that was 2015, you said?
That was 2018.
Oh, 2018. Okay.
I think that was beginning of June of 2018. I'd never been backpacking before that.
All right. So you got to take me from 2018, not that long ago, to now. Yeah. And you got like this big backpacking YouTube channel. You co-host a backpacking podcast. What's the line there? How do we track that?
Well, you know, in October of 2018, that's when I started the YouTube channel. And basically, I'd taken that trip in June, right? And I'd kind of fallen in love with it. And then over the summer, I was like, man, this is awesome. I started collecting my own gear. And then I took my wife on a backpacking trip, and she did not love it like I loved it. I'll go ahead and tell you. And then I was like, well, this ain't going to work. I'm going to have to take some other trip with some other people. And I'm a school teacher. I'm a high school math teacher as my day job. So I get these breaks, you know, you get summer break and fall break and all this stuff. And so on my fall break, which is always the first full week of October, I was like, I need to take a trip. You know, I want to take a trip and do some backpacking. And there was this, 50 or so mile trail about an hour and a half away from my house in Tennessee. And I asked my father-in-law if he'd be interested in thru hiking it with me. And he was like, yeah, how long do you think it'll take? And I was like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 days. And then he was like, count me in. So we went and done that trip. And I was like, I've been watching all these YouTube channels to try to figure out what kind of gear you're supposed to take and what mistakes to avoid and all that. And I was like, I think I can do that. I really would like to share. I don't know if you could tell, but I just have this passion for getting out there and doing it. And I was like, I'd love to share this passion. And I'm a teacher, like literally get paid to do it. So I absolutely love teaching people stuff. And I was like, what better way to teach people and document my growth as I learn how to backpack and grow in that kind of sport or whatever you want to call it, recreational activity, than to do this YouTube channel. Plus, it'd be cool to look back at some of the trips, especially when I first started. So I was like, I'm going to film it on my cell phone. And then we got like 2 or 3 days deep out there, and my phone completely stopped working. Didn't work.
Wow.
Yeah, it had like bars through it and stuff. I remember I was laying there. I was like, let's camp on top of a ridge so I have cell phone service, because I didn't want to miss a UK football game. So I was laying there in like my little bivvy tent watching the game. And then the post game comes on and then the phone stops working. So I still got most of that trip down. I got back and started editing it. And I was like, this is really fun. And then that sold me on the YouTube. And I was like, yep, I can do this. So I made a bunch of.
Had you ever made like videos or anything like that before?
No, not really. But
Self-teaching yourself editing?
I got a learning attitude, man. I think it's very important to not have a fixed mindset. If you want to grow in something and you're willing to put in the work, as long as you don't want to make excuses, you can do it. I mean, you limit yourself. So I was like, I can definitely do that. So I still am not good at it, but I'm trying, and I upgraded equipment and become a better speaker because of the, talking to the camera. And then also, my day job, I literally am talking for a living. So you kind of get a slight presence about you and become a better communicator. And so I just kept making the videos. The December rolled around to 2018, and I was like, I need to get really good at this. And I was like, I'm going to do a video every day until Christmas. And so I did it, and I made it like 16 or 17 days in, and I made a video, and I was like, I don't think I can do this, and at that point I had almost no subscribers and no support or anything like that. You're starting to build a community. Some people are like, you need to keep doing it. You can do it. It's only for like, 8 more days or so. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. And so I did the videos till Christmas, and I was like, if I do this, that taught me so much. It's like trial by fire. You learn how to edit a lot faster and how to speak and all that. And so I was like, I can do one of these a week. And so I just started, and then it kept growing. And actually, you mentioned Dan Becker. I had talked to him, I believe, in November of that year. So he had started his channel in November. I'd started mine in October, and we had talked like right there. And I talked to him on the phone for a long time. We're kind of growing and stuff. And then he just exploded. And I was like, well, if he can explode, if I keep grinding here, then I can grow as well. And it's fun. And so I continue to do it, and I'm still doing it to today. And so I just keep taking these trips. And fortunately for me, with YouTube, I was able to get some sponsors and stuff. And so what that enables you to do is to do even bigger trips, pay for a trip to Colorado or to do a thru hike or something like that. And so you can kind of be like, babe, I know we're married and everything, but I got a little extra income on the side from this. Maybe if I go take this trip, I can make a little more money for us, and we continue to grow and that kind of thing. And so it's just been fun. And, you had the pandemic and all that. That really freed up a lot of time for me because you couldn't work. And I was like, well, I can't work. I might as well head out to the woods around me and keep making videos and have fun.
You didn't do any of the Zoom call classes?
We had to do all that.
Oh.
And I got to tell you, I'd be lying if I said I didn't attend a few meetings from the woods.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I think everybody should have done that, for being honest. But now I don't know, with the school and stuff, I don't know if you have kids, but if you do, or if you're listening to this and you do, that was kind of a hot mess. You just kind of figuring everything all out at once with the pandemic and all that. And so the schools are kind of just shut down, and you're just working on the fly. So there's not a whole lot you can do in that moment. So that's whenever I stepped up and said, let's keep doing the backpacking stuff.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of sponsors, I know you brought up sponsors earlier. Guys, links to our awesome backpacking gear here at Outdoor Vitals will be found in the description of this episode. So if you want to let Tayson know that you listen to the podcast, please go through, click one of those things, and maybe purchase something. I don't know. So tell me, we had John Kelly on here a couple weeks ago, at least as far as the podcast is concerned. And we barely touched on the podcast. Could you tell me about the backpacking podcast? I mean, great name. First off,
Nailed it on the name.
nailed it.
Yeah, I can tell you something about it. So I don't know if John mentioned how it started, but I'll give you the quick play-by-play. I was like, John, let's take a trip. So we took this trip, and then we were sitting around and talking by the fire, and we, just telling stories and all this, and people was just sitting around listening. And then I think John was like, we should start a podcast. And I was like, no, dude, there's no way I'm going to start a podcast. I was like, I already got too many irons in the fire. I don't need another one. He's like, oh, I do a podcast already, or I've done one in the past through my day job and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, all right, I'll try it. But if it's going to be a lot of work, count me out, man. And I was like, all I want to do is show up and talk. I can spare a little bit of time to just show up and hang out because it's fun just sitting around talking to John. And we started the podcast, and I don't know when you're publishing this episode, but we just published our 100th episode.
Congratulations.
And thank you very much. And actually, Outdoor Vitals, they are a sponsor of our podcast too. And, we've been using your gear for a while now. So huge shout out to you. But on our podcast, we basically go off the cusp. It's not really planned for the most part. We do some episodes where we're like, you know what, let's do, Sawyer squeeze filter versus Catadine Bee Free. That'd be fun. Or you like tents, I like hammocks. Let's do a little debating. But typically we'll just pick out somebody that we think is interesting. Maybe we read their book, or we like their YouTube channel, or they done a through hike or something. Or for example, we had on Justin Sylvester and Randy, and Randy is blind, and him and Justin backpacked all of the 4,000 footers during the wintertime in one winter in New Hampshire, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since we've done the episode, and I was like, who more interesting could I talk to than a blind guy that bagged all these peaks in the dead of winter, and he is having to be signaled by his seeing eye dog and one of my friends to bag these peaks. And I can see, right? I have good vision. I mean, I wear glasses, but it would be a lot easier for me, I would feel like, to do all those peaks in the wintertime, but I don't think I could do it. So, we try to find people like that and have them on the show and just have a fun time talking to them. And a lot of times we'll live stream it on YouTube too. So then you get, if we were to have you on, if you got some people that are part of your community, they get to come on and interact with you and kind of live chat and ask questions that they ordinarily wouldn't have an avenue to do that. If they listen to you on a podcast, they're kind of, they're sitting there in the room with you, but they don't really have a voice. So that kind of gives them a voice too. And that's what the podcast is pretty much is about. I don't know how we got the name The Backpacking Podcast though.
I don't know how no one else got that before you. Like, podcasts have been out for 10 years at that point. Like,
I don't know. I don't know if you've heard of this podcast called The Survival Podcast, but he started this a long time ago, and he has just exploded. He has the biggest survival podcast. He does all of these episodes on preparedness and homesteading and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, John, our podcast is about backpacking. Let's see if the name Backpacking Podcast is available, like the Survival Podcast was available. But of course, he started his like 10 years ago. So what do you know? It was available. There was all the, like, Devin has backpacking experience. There's all these backpacking, all these different names. Nobody had taken it. So I was like, snatch that up. So we paid the little thing to get the website, backpackingpodcast.com and all that. And
well, now you got the pressure. You got the pressure when someone searches for you in iTunes. They're just looking for backpacking. Now they got you first. So if you're not good,
yeah, you're pretty much screwed at that point. Yeah. If you're not good, because you got to be with that name. You're backpacking podcast.
The backpacking podcast. Exactly.
That's
What are some of your favorite backpacking trips that you've gone on? What's your favorite one? What's the first one that pops into your head?
Well, I would say the long trail was probably the most life-changing because you really learn what's important to you. And what I learned was important to me is my family. I don't know if are you married?
I'm not.
Okay. Well, you probably dated somebody at some point, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you've ever been in a serious relationship and then spent a long time away from that person, it's very, very difficult. So my wife and I, we went to different universities our first year, and then we weren't married at the time. We were high school sweethearts, but we almost broke up. Long distance is very difficult. And then she transferred to my university, and ever since then, we've pretty much, been together, lived together, and we bought a house and stuff. And then flash forward to all of a sudden, I'm going to be gone for a month. Well, being gone for a month and not even being able to, hug this person that you spent the last, 8-10 years with every day, being able to see them, it's very difficult. So I learned, that you got to prioritize the things that are most important to you. And that's a huge priority to me, those relationships, especially with my wife. Also, waking up and seeing how simple that life can be for a month straight, it changes your perspective. You meet all kinds of these different people that you never would have met otherwise. And then I've been fortunate enough to be able to go meet up with them. You develop like this little trail family. And then we called our trail family was the Brunch Club. And we could talk more about that if you want to. But the Brunch Club had at most probably 14, 16 members, and fewest, our core group was probably 5 or 6 of us maybe. And I still text them weekly, group text, and talk to them, and have met up with them a couple times since we've done the trip. But Vermont Long Trail, that was legit, man. I'd never been to mountains like that, and every region's got its different terrain, but there's no switchbacks, it inspired the Appalachian Trail. So I guess that they'd done that when they blazed it before the switchbacks were invented, but it's just straight up the mountains. At one point I was just so exhausted. I'd backpack like 40 degrees, raining for 12 miles straight, started hallucinating, seeing stuff that wasn't there. Oh, wow. And all you want to do is just get to the shelter and warm up. You're shivering. Then all of a sudden you stumble onto some trail magic, and then that just kind of revives you and rejuvenates you. And then, the trail provides, and then you just push on. You complete that 20-mile day or whatever your aspirations were whenever you set out, and you make it through the rain, and you meet some new people at the shelter, and they share food with you, or you tell stories, or you make a fire or whatever. It's like, it's life-changing, man. It's a big deal.
That's really cool. What is the Vermont Trail for those who maybe aren't familiar with it? Sorry, the Long Trail.
No worries. So Vermont Long Trail, I can't remember what year it was established, but it's pre-Appalachian Trail, and it takes the average person about a month or so to complete. And I think, if I remember correctly, it's around 300, maybe 400. I can't remember. It's been a couple of years now, but it starts on the border of Massachusetts and Vermont, and it ends at the Canadian border with Vermont. Wow. So you backpack either north to south or south to north, obviously, and you start at either terminus. But I started at the south, right at Massachusetts, and then I kept walking until I hit Canada, and then you walk through the woods into Canada, and then you kind of try to find your way into town from the middle of nowhere. And that's the Vermont Long Trail in a nutshell. Of course, it's got a number of shelters every 6 to 10 miles. And the first 100 miles or so coincide with the Appalachian Trail that runs through there. And then it kind of splits off. So the last 2/3 or whatever it is, you're walking through a lot less beaten down path, because the Appalachian Trail, if you're familiar with it, it's got a lot of foot traffic, as where the long trail doesn't have as much. So when they split, you're getting smacked in the face with pine branches for 5 miles straight. But the scenery's a lot better, and the lodges or the shelters that you stay in, they're more cabin style. And so it's awesome, man.
Yeah, I can imagine having been up in that area before. Just the country up there is beautiful, like that New England area.
Yeah, it's rugged. It's different. And the grade of the hills are different. But I was fortunate enough to be able to go back up there. I guess it was, I don't know, in the last 6 months or so, we flew up there and done a little trip. Myself, one of my buddies, Backpacking with Jason's his YouTube channel. Jason, we flew up there together, and I got to show him around and kind of relive some of those experiences. And then a couple of my buddies that were from Massachusetts, they drove up and met up with us, and we got to go out and have a couple of drinks and hang out and play some guitar. Well, one of my buddies, his name was Caveman, that was on the trail, the Vermont Long Trail. He brought this child-sized guitar. And so I have experience playing guitar a little bit. I kind of taught myself through high school and college and stuff. And then Caveman, of course, knew how to play guitar. Obviously, he had the guitar with him. And then his best friend was with him, and they have their own little like 2-man band where they both play. And so his name's Birdie. We call him Birdie. But the three of us jamming on guitar, singing at night around the shelters. We hit this one shelter. We had met the guy earlier that stays at the shelter. It's called the Green Mountain Club, kind of sponsors and maintains the trail and that kind of stuff. And there's people stationed at some of the shelters, and you pay like $5 and spend the night there. And we had met him on top of a mountain. He's like, actually, I'm spending the night over at the shelter over there. I'm stationed there, and I'll see you guys there later tonight. And he come over there, and he walked in. He's like, I got a surprise for you guys. He's like, what is it? He opened his chest up, and he had a second guitar in there. And that was the first time on the trip that we had 2 guitars. And you're talking about fun, man. Having somebody play lead, somebody play rhythm, you could sing and jam. And they even stayed after to like 11 a.m. the next morning. Got a late start to the day just so we could keep jamming.
Oh, that's awesome. I play guitar, and I can imagine just like being able to bring what kind of guitar was he able to bring out there?
Well, he had hiked the Appalachian Trail the year before, and he said that about 1,000 miles in, they had went and resupplied in a town or something, and they went to this pawn shop just to hang out, maybe kill a little time. And he haggled with this guy and got him to sell him this child-sized guitar. I don't remember. It was probably like $25, and he had all these people to sign it while he was on the trail. So they'd hang out, so if you jammed with him, he had a permanent marker and you could sign it. And then whenever he got done with the trail, some of them was starting to wear off. So he like clear coated and everything and kind of solidified those on there. But it was so beat up, and it was so
That's awesome.
He had strapped it to the outside of his backpack, right? So you got to imagine this child-sized guitar. It's maybe as long as maybe as long as somebody's arm or something, maybe a little shorter.
Yeah.
And he had taken a couple of trash bags, just black trash bags, and he stuck the guitar in there, wrapped it up, and then he had some 550 cord, and he strapped it to the outside of his backpack. So every time he sit down, the guitar is just kind of slamming on the ground, so it was like split. So he glued it back together, glued the back back on, had all these signatures, and so I don't know, it was awesome. Whenever they came to visit me, whenever I was doing the little reminiscent trip on the long trail not too long ago, and they brought like 3 guitars and stayed in the hotel with me, and we jammed out for a while and got some recordings, and I don't know, it's just so much fun.
Oh man, I can kind of imagine how that guitar would sound after a while. It's
half a song and you had to retune it.
Yeah, that's.
We broke like an ink pen or a pencil, and we made a capo out of it using some rubber bands.
Oh my gosh.
we were looking up the tabs, right? You know, you're playing, you're like, somebody's like, oh, can you play this? And you're like, oh, not yet, but if we got service, we can Google the tabs. So if you look up the tabs, you can pretty much play whatever you want with chords. And so I was like, man, if we could capo this on the second fret, I could really jam this song. You know, we could really sing it and stuff. So you kind of just engineer it however you can. So we wrapped that pencil up. Maybe it was a hair band. Caveman had real long hair. So I think we might have used that instead of a rubber band to kind of make a makeshift capo.
Wow. I think I would have just bought a capo if I were on the AT.
Well, yeah, probably. There were several capos when they come to the hotel. I mean, we didn't have to make one, but when you're in the middle of the woods and you really want to play that song, what are you going to do?
Sorry to go into too much detail about this for those at home. Okay, a child beginner guitar, like the almost plasticky kind of ones, like a Hello Kitty guitar, or are we talking like the tiny little travel ones that are like a well-made guitar but like tiny?
I don't know about well-made. It was definitely wooden, but it was kind of the size of a mandolin.
Okay. Because I have looked at, there's these things called these little travel guitars. I've seen them in guitar stores. I'm like, oh, that might be useful for one thing. When
I was at Trail Days, I saw this one chick and she was carrying around a clear plastic guitar with like, I don't remember. What are the strings that have the coating? What kind of guitar is that?
Like a nylon string or?
Yeah. And you play, instead of playing with a pick or maybe just picking, you're really using your fingers. And, you know, I don't know if people are watching, but you're kind of playing like this and you're plucking with a bunch of fingers at once. Is it classical?
Classical guitar. Yeah. That'll be the nylon string. So it's almost like a clear plastic string instead of the steel.
Yeah. Or copper or whatever. So I saw her walking around. She had that strapped to the outside of her pack. And I was like, that's really smart because that's not going to rust. Of course, it's plastic, but that's not going to rust. And I don't know how long the strings and stuff will last being out there, but
I don't know how long the glue will last in a wild environment like that. Like I'm already afraid to like leave the heat off in my apartment for too long in case my guitar, starts warping.
Well, we definitely didn't have like humidity settings or anything like that out there. It's just kind of take what you can. But if you're out backpacking, you know how to play guitar. If you can stomach carrying the weight, I mean, there's few things more fun than being out there playing music with people in the middle of the woods.
I promise you, like everybody here is ultralight, right, at Outdoor Vitals because that's the kind of gear we make. I think they'll laugh me out of town if I brought a little travel guitar with me.
You might be the big man on campus, bro. You never know. They might be like, oh my gosh, you got to do this every time. And here's the key with the ultralight, right? Anytime I do ultralight, it's an excuse so that I can carry more weight of other stuff I want, like chocolate or maybe a guitar.
Oh, that's good. What are you planning on doing any other like big, huge hikes like that? Or was that like too long? Did you learn your lesson? Like you're not going to go on that long of a hike?
Well, as I said before, with my wife, she actually did the Foothills Trail with us. So she was out there for like 5 days with me and that was her longest trip, but she is sold on the fact of doing the Camino de Santiago, which is a pilgrimage across Spain.
Yeah, me too. I'm sold on that.
Yeah, and it's a different type of journey.
Different type of backpacking.
Yeah, it's more front country, cultural based, pilgrimage style, stay in some hostels. You know, even if you didn't go ultralight, your pack is still ultralight. Mm-hmm. You know, you got some clothes and that kind of stuff, and you're kind of buying food and drinking wine along the way. So she is sold on that. And what we would love to do is not this coming summer. Of course, again, I have summer break, so I have a couple months of vacation, but not this summer, but next summer, we would love to do that. And we'd like to go over there, backpack from France over to the western kind of seafront area of Spain. And I think that would take us about a month and maybe do a little traveling, check out some of the cool cities around Europe. And also, if I could do the Appalachian Trail, our idea is she would kind of provide support. We would do the kind of van lifestyle, and I would still have to spend, maybe 2 or 3 nights in the woods if I'm backpacking, just the traditional Appalachian Trail style. But maybe at road crossing, she could provide support, or, maybe I spent a couple nights in the woods, and then, I happen to be able to camp with her at the van. And that would also offer up, you wouldn't have to worry about the hitchhiking. You just be like, okay, meet me here at this time, and then we can go into town. We can get a hotel. We can shower and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, you're scheming. There you go. That's
yeah. Well, I don't know. I just don't know if that will work out. But definitely the Camino. And
yeah, I've been looking at the Camino thing. I like to Google travel, and
tell me about it.
I've been looking at the northern route of the Camino de Santiago.
Is that shorter?
It's shorter than the one that comes from like the edge of France, but it's like it skirts the coast, the northern coast of Spain, and it just looks amazing.
We were looking at the French way, but
that's like the main one. The French way is the main one. It's also the long one, but
yeah. But you don't have to do. If you want the certificate and stuff, which I still haven't even applied for my certificate for the Foothills Trail or the Long Trail. I don't know why it just doesn't.
You did it, yeah.
Right? It's what's the paper? So I think though, don't you only have to do so many miles before it's considered a through hike of that trail?
I think so. I think you could do it in like 5 days or something like that.
Yeah, it's like 100 miles or something like that, but it's not. It's not the kind of backpacking that we do across the U.S. typically, though.
Nah, it's not quite the same. We're too spread out here for that.
That's true. But I really hope you get to do it, man. It would be fantastic.
Well, I might just do like the 5-day route. We'll see. But it'd be really cool to hear. So I got interested in that a few years ago, but I saw that Homemade Wanderlust Dixie's video on that thing. Where she was doing it. I was like, oh, that looks so cool. That looks so cool.
You're right.
And just like reignited my my want to do that. I've also been studying Spanish, not Spain Spanish, but Spanish. So it's got to all come together.
Yeah, that's what we said too. We was like, what would make that even better is if we were fluent in Spanish. And of course, everybody's like, oh, I took Spanish in high school or whatever. So I did take Spanish in high school, and then I lived in Ecuador, and then I got to the point where I could at least have a one-way conversation with you if you were speaking Spanish. And still, even, I watch shows like Narcos in Mexico or something.
There you go.
Got the subtitles on, but I still recognize a lot. Yeah, that's true. So get your practice in. But I would love to take like formal classes and master the Spanish, and that would make the experience even better over there.
I can recommend italki as a service. What is that? So italki, italki.com. And it's just a bunch of like tutors, like private tutors. And they have, it's like this, it's like a Zoom call that you do with the tutor. You just schedule an hour, you pay someone, honestly, like a lot, like the US dollar is pretty strong. So you can pay someone in Colombia or someone to talk with you in Spanish for an hour for like $8 an hour. And it's going to be more if you want to talk to someone from Spain just because of the euro and all that. But yeah, you can just like set up these appointments. You could just see everybody's like nice to meet you things. Some people teach like classes, like formally are trying to teach you things while doing conversation practice. And then sometimes you could just pay to just talk with someone for an hour. And it's kind of better than like doing like the online meetups because people are flaky with that kind of stuff. If you're paying like a tutor and I've been doing it for once a week for about a year. I've been talking in Spanish for an hour with someone, and I cannot recommend that enough. I cannot recommend italki enough because it's really affordable. And I don't know, my Spanish has gone way up because I get to have a full-on conversation once a week. And that conversation once a week, it's kind of like anything. Like if you take guitar lessons, for example, you have to be practicing for your guitar teacher at the end of that thing. Like so it kind of encourages you to do, okay, well, I'm going to read in Spanish for an hour today. I'm going to watch some television in Spanish with the Spanish subtitles on, like Narcos. I started with that kind of stuff. So
I'll definitely check out italki, man.
whole system. I get really passionate about the language learning lately.
I'll tell you this, so my time in Ecuador, right? I was doing an internship as a student teacher. So I was teaching at this bilingual school. So I actually taught in English, but it's almost kind of like a foreign exchange program where you go live with the family or whatever. And I got to tell you, I'm not sure there's a better way to learn Spanish than living with the family that only speaks Spanish, and your only means of communication are Google Translate or knowing Spanish.
Oh, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right about that.
There was this guy. He was like my housemate. Like we had separate bedrooms and stuff, but his was for a whole college semester. And dude, when I showed up, I was there for a month. He was there. He'd already been there since January, and I'm getting there in April. And his Spanish was so good. You know, he's going to the nightclubs. He was dating girls down there. He was going to play soccer with the kids at the fields. I was like, man, he is living it. I should have been out here longer, and my Spanish would be amazing. But I don't know. If I can learn it, it'd help with the Camino. It'd be a fun backpacking trip regardless.
Yeah. Did you do any hiking in Ecuador? Curious.
I kinda. So I had a plan to propose to my wife in Ecuador. We had already been dating for several years, and we'd already been living together. And I kind of had to sneak the ring. And it's fairly safe down there, but I was a little bit worried. You know, I had another person that was going on the trip too. I had her to wear the ring through security at the U.S. airport. And then we got down there and I got it back and stuff from her. And then we were down there for 4 weekends, and you kind of want to stay with your host family some because they're hosting you. I mean, you're paying to stay there. I think it was like $300 rent or something for a month. But the first weekend I stayed with them. And then the second weekend I was like, this is it. So we booked this little vacation to Baños. And the cool thing about that is it's a full-on rainforest down there. A little bit scary because I hadn't taken malaria medication. There's a lot of mosquitoes. But we were down there and we got this little cabin and stuff. And we booked this excursion, if you will, to do this waterfall tour. And part of the tour was like this little hiking. And so we went on the tour, and you're basically, it's like a movie, man. You're driving on the side of a cliff. You know, on one side, there's like a 200-foot drop, and you're in this old diesel truck with like a roll cage above you, but you're on these like basically church pews sitting in the truck bed of this old like military diesel truck, and they're driving, and you know, their tires barely hugging the edge. And then we're driving under waterfalls and all this. And we get to this one spot where you get out and you can either go to this little kind of restaurant, kind of refreshment place, or you can go on the hike. So we went on the hike and went down the hill, and it's probably a half mile to a mile or so. And it just starts raining. And I was like, oh, man, it's raining, but I'm still going to make it happen. So we walk down, and there's this beautiful waterfall, Cascades de, I can't remember. I got it. I got a note in my phone. I'd love to revisit it with her. So I asked this guy in Spanish if he would take a picture of us, please. And he was like, yeah. And so I handed him my phone, and my wife and I got next to the waterfall, and, you know, it's raining on us. We're soaking wet. And he takes the picture, and I was like, oh, one more, please. You know, uno más, por favor, por favor. He's like, sí. Okay. So I get down on one knee, pull the ring out of my pocket, propose, and then get the photos. And then we hike back up and finish our tour and stuff. But that was, I guess, the really the only hiking that I did while I was down there. But it couldn't get more beautiful, man. We saw multiple hundreds of feet waterfalls took this like zip line across, and there's waterfalls on both sides, and you're going across this canyon. You're 300 feet in the air, and your legs are shaking. I'm scared of heights anyway. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, that was my hiking experience down there.
There you go. That's awesome. Well, we're almost out of time, so I just want to ask people to go check out the Jeremiah Stringer Hikes YouTube channel and the Backpacking Podcast, which I believe Tayson, my boss, should be on in the future at some point, right?
Well, he has already been on, and we have, I think we have it in the works to have him on again.
Yeah. That's what I've been seeing. I'm on the email chain for that. So
we have, I don't think that we had live streamed the first episode. And so I think that what we would like to do is live stream, and then obviously some of your customers and stuff could come on too and ask questions. But we basically dissected your all Shadowlight backpack when I don't know if you listened to that episode, but if you haven't heard it and you like Outdoor Vital stuff, you definitely need to listen to that, because we took a deep dive into not only that product, but some others as well.
There you go. Anywhere else where people can find you?
Just the typical Instagram, Facebook, and any social media, Jeremiah Stringer Hikes.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on, Jeremiah. For those listening, feel free to send us your comments, questions about backpacking, cool outdoor stories, or ideas for future episode topics. We might read it on the show. You can do that by commenting on our brand new YouTube channel, Live Ultralight Podcast YouTube channel, or you can send us an email at liveultralightpodcast@gmail.com. Please send us your positive iTunes reviews. We will definitely read those on the show. And if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to us wherever you get the show. And thank you. We will see you on the trail.